All right. Good morning and welcome to the Neary Building Community Communication Subcommittee meeting. It's Friday, July 26, 2024, and it is 9:05 a.m. All voting members are present. First order of business is approving our meeting minutes from June 10, 2024. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Roger?
Aye.
Denise?
Aye.
And I am aye as well. So those are approved. Next item is communication plan regarding the August 12th vote. So I'm looking for any and all ideas beyond the obvious of how we want to make sure that no one can question our advertisement of the importance of that vote. I do know that my Southborough already kind of picked up the theme of that from the school committee meeting this week and published something yesterday. I was planning to use social media. We can obviously use Parent Square, but I think there's a broader audience beyond those two that we just need to capture and understand so that down the road, someone can't say, well, they didn't do their due diligence in coming to one plan. Where are all my options to choose from, right? We all know how much detail we've been in. We have no idea where this is going at this point. We all know cost is going to be a key driver probably of our deliberations as a committee. So just wanted to think about outside the box thinking, Roger, whether you have any meetings with the Senior Center and other groups that we need to just target for awareness, which will then lead into our next agenda item of whatever we decide, how do we make sure people understand it? So I'll pause and kind of see thoughts or ideas outside of what I've already suggested. Go ahead, Roger.
So my meeting is scheduled, well, I guess I'll just say it's the first meeting, scheduled at the Senior Center at, with Jim's men's group, if you will, 10 o'clock next Friday. It's been delayed a little bit for a couple of different reasons. They couldn't do it, I couldn't do it, and I wasn't sure that, frankly, the information I had was kind of mature enough to make, to necessarily be at the stage where it made sense to deliver it. Now, and I'm going to go over for a little bit of a dry run as far as maybe take a PowerPoint presentation with me. I'm not sure what I should use yet, but they're going to help me set that up. So I'll take something over. I'd actually like some maybe a little bit of help on maybe what I should use. But one of the things that we won't have a handle on at that point in time is still the cost situation. So I have a couple of options. They've been very flexible. I could move it out. Although the problem is if I move it out, I have a couple of Friday problems coming up. Jason, I do not have a time problem today, as you may be aware. As I mentioned it to Chelsea, that my Delta canceled my flight, so I had to cancel the trip that I had scheduled for the end of this week. Thank you, Delta, or thank you, CrowdStrike, or thank you, somebody. But so just thoughts on that. I am scheduled to go to the Senior Center next Friday and bring them up to date as far as we are. I just really won't have, and cost I think will be important to them. But I really won't have, we really won't have anything finalized by then because it looks like it's still a work in process. So that's my first comments.
So let me react. First of all, is the audience that you have on that Friday, I absolutely think you should keep it. Like the more we can get out there and acknowledge, right, where the items are really loose, right? Because I think that will hopefully gather feedback of what they're interested in beyond the obvious of cost, right? And it may just be an interesting cost, right? Or maybe something else we're not thinking about.
I'll plan on doing that. It's a definite commitment from both parties then, and
Okay.
so it will happen.
Okay. So my first question is, do you think my understanding of that group is it's a portion, it's a sub-representation of the senior population. It's not fully representative of the user group of that building on a regular basis. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's probably the most active existing group as I understand it currently. There was another group which doesn't, it's fallen apart a little bit. Okay. I think that I can probably determine um, from discussion with some members in that group and also some other folks there, um, what's the best way to kind of expand the communication to others outside of that group.
Okay. So my suggestion is keep the meeting,
Well,
but also figure out a way that potentially we post and advertise some sort of office hours. So that if there's anyone in that user, right, Roger from the Near Building Committee is gonna be here at 10 a.m. on this date to talk about the project for anyone that has questions or comments. Right that way you can have more of a conversation as opposed to a formal presentation. That's so I think that would be one way to supplement what you're planning to do.
I,
The
I
Good.
agree with, by the way, I do agree with what you just said. I think that makes sense. And I think that, quick comment, I think, I think the meeting next Friday, I don't intend to have it be a long presentation. So I think it'll be hopefully a presentation that'll be helpful to kind of drive a conversation, okay, back and forth.
Okay. So that's one thing. The second thing I would say is I can't help you with this unless we want to call another public meeting, but I would get from Kathy Cook. I know she has, right? If we have, let's just use hypotheticals, right? If we had an 80, a 90, or $100 million project, right? What that cost is to the average household, right? That's kind of the range we've been talking in, right? Like it could be slightly higher, slightly lower. They're doing their cost estimates, but I think that would be just a good temperature, right? Of there's two things I would like to understand as a voting member, right? Is one, what are people's view of the low versus the high end of the range, right? Like if at the low end of the range you're getting a two grade school, the high end of the range you're getting a 4 grade school, right? Is that delta between the two a gating factor in how people would approach this project, given the potential, right? You do the 4 grade, we don't have another school construction project for 30 years potentially, right? So much beyond probably most of our times in Southborough. Um, I think that's an important part for me as I think about this, but also, right, just that low number, right? If they see it's going to cost them X amount per year, like, is there some sort of reaction that comes out of it? Those are the two things that I think would be helpful as we think about cost in a vacuum. There's obviously so much more we need to think about than just cost, but um, you could probably get that number from Kathy and say if we had an 80 or a 90 or $100 million project, what does it mean to the average taxpayer?
So I'll do that. I'm also going to reach out to either Jim or Katie, I guess, that they had a set of slides that I think were useful that I haven't captured at this point in time. I don't have them. I've seen them, right? I've seen them presented on the screen as far as the couple of the design choices, right? Which I think this group would like to at least see what's being discussed. Not that anything's been finalized, but this is what's being discussed in that area.
So Greg and I and others hosted a open forum for faculty yesterday. It wasn't a public meeting, but we just allowed faculty to come and hear an update. We have a slide deck from that presentation, which was very similar to what you saw in the school committee on Monday. That would probably be what you use, but one of the things we committed to was we're going to pare it down to what's still in play. based on our votes the other night. So let me get that from Katie for you, and then you can decide if you need more or less than that.
That'd be great. That would be great.
Greg's
Appreciate
planning to distribute that same package to the school faculty.
that. Okay.
Denise? Oh, sorry, Roger, were you done or no?
Yes, I am. So now I guess let's get back to the communication plan on the August 12th vote.
Okay. Denise?
So regarding the seniors, this is something that I said to Kathy a couple weeks ago, not just the average, but because some of them have lower, valued properties. I don't want them to be shell shocked at a number. So I'd like to, say, all right, if your property is valued at 500,000 and 900,000, not just, a median house in town, because that may be staggering. And as far as, I do agree with Roger about, presenting something to them, but I want to make sure we present to everybody. Do they have, and I think they do have a communication, like a bulletin that we could probably be in if we aren't already. I think, publishing that date would be very important in any communication that maybe the director of the senior citizens maybe has email addresses or whatever, that you could do an email blast. And Roger, to your point, I don't think you really can come up with anything concrete, because we're not going to have it back till the 9th, and you certainly can't have a meeting between the 9th and the 12th. It's just not going to happen.
Well, especially this particular group, which is the most active group, they only meet Fridays at 10, and every once in a while they miss a Friday. And now they also publish they do have a newsletter that goes out. It's a monthly newsletter that over the summer is infrequent. So even that doesn't go out. I talked to the director over there, Pam, a while ago, and she said, yeah, that's slowed down over the summer. So
and maybe we
don't control the timing.
Right. And maybe we could getting this word out, maybe we could also publish something at the library. I don't know if that works. I mean, any vehicle in town.
I can ask Ryan if there's anything he can post there.
That would be, great if that's just another vehicle, because I know there are a lot of activities going over there in the summer going on with younger families, because I see it on my Southborough. So maybe that's a good vehicle that we could use, because there's, a number of parents going over there with their kids through the summer. Just an idea.
Okay, great. Greg?
A couple of comments. The first is, Roger, if you think it'd be helpful to have someone join you next Friday, I'd be happy to join you if there's a benefit. That's one comment.
Well, okay, so I'm not sure actually, Greg. If you'd put a hold on 10 o'clock next Friday, I can let you know early in the week. It just sort of depends on how many more meetings are going to occur after this. I guess I don't think it would be unhelpful.
So just think about it. I'll pencil it in my calendar, and if you think it's helpful, I'd be happy to go. I do go to the Dull Men's group in Northborough a few times a year and do presentations on a variety of topics of their choice. So it's not just to establish a connection with the Southborough chapter would be helpful for me, but this might not be the right venue. So I'm willing if people think would be beneficial. So think about it. I'm also not opposed.
I hadn't considered it, but I'm sort of warming to the idea, and I think you and I are chatting on next Wednesday, right? Anyway?
Yes.
Just the two. Okay. All right.
The other comment is, in terms of getting the information out to the community, we could contact Laura Hayes from Community Advocate. If we draft an article, she'll publish it for us. I think it's a pretty broad-based communication that goes out to most citizens in the community, and a lot of people read that. That's an opportunity, I think, as well.
That's a great idea. Is there any objection from the committee for me to work with Greg and or Stephanie to just draft that and get it out, or do you want to have another public meeting to approve it?
I'm fine with that, Jason.
I'm also fine with that.
Okay. All right, so plan prior to August 12th is regular updates on Facebook, probably 1 or 2 Parent Square emails, community advocate article, Roger's meeting with at least the group next Friday, but considering additional Q&A, me to talk with the library about anything they can do on their end, and then if anyone has other ideas, certainly feel free to bring them forward if as they dawn on you. Denise?
I just had an idea when you were speaking about Parent Square. It is summer, and so parents, I think, would be more reactive to something coming out from the building principals, from their emails. If we can do that, if that's allowable, just say, there's a meeting, not advocating one way or the other, but just that there's a meeting. And, I'm just afraid they might just say, oh, it's Parent Square, I can deal with that later. It's just informational. You know what I mean? But if they see something from one of the principals, is that allowable? To post a meeting that way?
So I'll give you the contrary view to that.
Mhm.
As a parent, so I obviously would love to receive a communication on this topic. But as a parent, in Finn, Neary, and
Mhm.
Woodward now, I would be getting 3 emails in that instance, and I don't,
Uh,
right,
Mm.
and
Mm.
I imagine there are,
mhm.
right, and then if you add in Trotter and potentially Algonquin, I think one of the things we've learned, right, Greg, is depending on your settings, right, people that especially either don't have kids in the school or kids at Algonquin, some of our messages haven't gone to them, and we've gotten
Right.
some,
That has
right.
been corrected, Jason.
What'd you say?
I said that has been corrected. We now have a targeted just south for Algonquin families.
Okay.
But you make a good point, Jason. You could, if you had 4 kids in the system, you could get it 4 times. I'm just trying to find a way in my mind to make sure that everybody can't say, hey, I didn't know anything about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Was just a wild idea.
I think maybe also another idea too is run just a quick ad on SAM, the public access channels, and just I know that I know some people who watch those educational channels, so it might be another easy opportunity.
Okay. I can talk to Terry about that. All right. So then let's switch to post the vote. We're gonna hopefully come to a decision. Obviously we don't know what the decision will be or whether it's unanimous, split, right? And let's face it, right? A possible result is we can't agree on a project to move forward, right? And then we're in kind of a what's next phase. So given all those variables, my thoughts were we at least need to update the community on where we landed, right? And it likely will require a communication subcommittee meeting, like immediately thereafter that meeting. I have no intention of doing it that night, but I think if we can agree on calendars on somewhere in that week, but I know it's highly dependent on what the school committee does as well, right? So Neary Building Committee could come to a decision, then the school committee could have a different view. So we're gonna have to schedule it after, those 2 votes have been taken, and assuming that they are on the same page, I think we're gonna have to be ready to release something fairly quickly. Because what I want to do is make sure the Neary Building Committee is controlling the narrative as opposed to someone else watching our videos, making their own interpretations of the meeting. And I think one of the things that's critically important is, especially if it's not a unanimous decision of how we're moving forward, how to make sure we capture the steps we're going to be taking moving forward to mitigate the concerns of anyone that is in the minority on whichever path we take. Roger?
I want to frame this question as how we would communicate things, since that's what this committee purview involves. So let's assume that that there's not unanimity, say that 5 times fast, in, I'm gonna say both committees, both the building committee and the school committee. Now in the building committee, because it's an odd number, you'll have a majority one way or the other. It could be unanimous, could be a majority on a decision. The school committee, which because of circumstances and some decisions, is not is not an odd number. But let's suppose it's whatever vote is taken is either unanimous or at least not a tie. And let's suppose those two committees actually disagree. So there's not even an agreement between the school committee and the building committee. What happens as far as how we well, I mean, I guess what happens? I guess this question is also probably going to will be discussed in the NBC. And how would we communicate it?
Well, hopefully we don't end up there. Let me start there.
I understand.
But I think the realistic thing is we're gonna have to hit a timeout button. It's gonna recalibrate the schedule, right? In terms of we'll miss the MSBA deadline at the end of the month unless it's like one small item that could be rectified very quickly and shift kind of the vote back. But I think it would be a pause button, a regrouping, and trying to figure out what the path forward is.
Which we would have to communicate certainly to the community, I guess. Okay. My other question, I guess, is really for NBC, but it kind of relates to how important is it to be unanimous for the MSBA? Do they care if we're unanimous, or they just want to know what we've chosen? I don't know.
I think that's probably a better question for Skanska or Air Street.
Yeah,
I can't imagine that's not a situation they have. So I'm not gonna. I have my theories, but I'm not gonna answer it. I don't know, Greg, if you have any prior working experience, or Stephanie, with that. Otherwise, we'll just leave it to them for the next meeting.
Agreed. In terms of the communication after the 12th, I'm not opposed. And again, it's not my choice. I'm just not an official member of the committee, but meeting that evening after the meeting on the 12th will be in person. It probably is logical for us to just convene as a subcommittee. And I think it's probably good for us to start crafting, we know what the scenarios are going to be. Maybe just creating some frameworks of communications, because we're going to need some time to do it well and really think it through and make sure our message is on point. So my recommendation is we do meet post-meeting of the 12th as a subcommittee. And in preparation for that meeting, we can start crafting some drafts so we're not starting from point A.
That's a great idea. I can post it, and then if, depending on what time it is, we have to call an audible, we can always postpone it to a later point that week. But let's try it. Let's hope that we can accomplish it that night. I think we have 3 scenarios that we can all acknowledge, right? Is we're going to either have a majority vote on one of our 3 options. We're going to have essentially a split vote on one of our 3 options, or we're going to be at, I'll call it an impasse in a pause. I mean, those are the 3 templates I think we draft and be ready with. Stephanie?
I was just having a thought that it's a bigger picture thought that maybe not helpful, but I was just thinking about before the vote, and like Roger, you talking about your meeting at the senior center, and I was thinking about us as a communication committee and thinking about two-way communication. And I feel like I often come into a committee meeting thinking about how we communicate things out. but I'm wondering about how we pull in information that informs the vote. And like, I know at our meeting with the faculty, we encourage them to send in their thoughts about some of these things. And so that I just found myself thinking about, like, us as a committee, can we pull in communication that informs the vote? And I don't know if that is possible.
And that is a great lead to the next agenda item, because I think there is one thing, at least I think, potentially could inform at least my own decision and likely others based on where I've seen some of the conversation going at the NBC. But I think we need to think about what the questions are that, or the information that people want to provide us feedback on, right? The educators, I think we've already given them an avenue to do that. So unless you or Greg think that we need to do anything further with the individuals that will be using and operating these buildings, then I think we've checked that box. So then it becomes the community, right? Is what do we feel like they want to provide feedback on? I mean, Greg, you've had that forum opened every once in a while. I realize that it's stale and no one will be able to find the link at this point anyways, but I do think it's a great point by Stephanie, and maybe we just say, what information do you want to see or hear of how we got to our vote, other than the obvious of cost?
Well, I'm picturing, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when you talked earlier about 80 million, 90 million, 100 million, and then Denise talked about the different home values, like I'm picturing a table, and so if you give that to people and ask then to weigh in on cost, so that it's like, it's a different thing for the educators, but for the homeowners.
Yeah. I think that's probably a polling question, right? That we go out to the community with. So Roger, I may be able to take your to-do back and just go to Kathy and say, can we get that chart? We want to do, the communications committee wants to do a survey, but then you'll have that chart also to get verbal feedback from the seniors.
That'd be excellent.
Okay.
And I just wanted to, I put my hand up just to kind of follow Stephanie's comment. So I will certainly bring back the reaction, okay, anything from the discussion as far as feedback from the group that I'll be talking with. Obviously, it's not a huge sample, but I'll also try to find out what the best way they believe would be to get broader feedback from that group, through the director, et cetera. So
That's great. Greg?
I'm going to state the obvious, and that is, I think our communication should be very clear about what the purpose of August 12th is and what it really means and what it doesn't mean. I think that, I think that's really important, because people are not voting a project on August 12th. The NERI building committee and the school committee is deciding on a pathway. And there still is all of this time and energy for input and feedback, and ultimately a voice at town meeting and a voice at the ballot box, potentially. And I think that's important, just to keep front and center about this upcoming meeting.
That's a really good comment. And I think the balance to that, though, is going to be, obviously, I don't think the taxpayers want us spending money on feasibility for something that is not going to pass muster, right? So it's that delicate balance, right? And that's where I think our committee has gotten hung up, the broader committee has gotten hung up, right? In terms of, right, like, what do we think? Like, and I think I don't want us making assumptions. I want us hopefully using data to do that. Denise?
Yeah, Greg took the words out of my mouth. That was my next comment, because if you remember correctly, back at the open meeting that we had with the parents and town officials and town members, it was residents. It was one of these like, well, when do we get to vote on what we want? And I just don't want to I want to be sure that we can try to control the 12th and not turn it into one of those, well, I don't like that and I want this, because that's really not what that's about. And I agree with Greg completely. That's my big fear of what the 12th will turn into.
Roger?
I just wanted to make sure that my comment was understood correctly when I said to bring information back from the broader group. I didn't just mean the broader group of the men's group. I meant to try to find out how to bring information back from the entire group of seniors, you know, whatever that means.
Okay. So it sounds like we're going to meet after the meeting on the 12th to try to finalize the post communication. The pre-communication, Greg and I will work with this framework that was discussed here, but then that leads us to surveying regarding a 2 versus 4 grade school cost. How do we feel about actually putting a survey out there showing kind of a potential range of difference and getting feedback on that, which goes to this whole chart concept we've been talking about. Just letting people react, way too expensive, never could vote for it.
Yeah.
Would vote, I'm trying to figure out what but I think to me, the important part is, do people understand the potential difference between the options? That it's not just 2 times, it's a 2 times multiple. And, you know, is the cost of entry, right? The cost of doing something too much in people's opinion, right? Opinion, well, it isn't a vote. It's a piece of information of how we approach this project. Now, my personal belief is we haven't presented enough yet in terms of how to make an informed decision, because one of the things that from a capital perspective I think about is, if we only do a 2 grade school, how long is it going to be until we are looking at another MSBA type school project, likely at Finn? Right? You know, Woodward, I think we can all agree we'll need some mechanicals and stuff like that, but we have another 25, 30 years to go on that. I don't think we can say the same for Finn. So I've tasked Arrow Street with that, just coming back with a general idea. But I think that certainly is going to inform some people's views, myself included, about how to make that decision now and into the future. Because 5 versus 10 versus 15 certainly changes that dynamic. So I think we need to get something. I'm open to the ideas of how we do that, but I do think we haven't surveyed on cost. We've purposely kind of kicked that can down the road. And I know it's an ugly topic. I know we don't, but it's clearly where the committee is focused right now. So Roger?
Jason, I want to follow up on your understand the differences comment, which I think is important, but I also think we need to make sure hopefully we get on the same page as far as recognizing what differences are very important to communicate. For example, you said, well, it's just not 2 times. I think to make sure that and not only as far as future cost, but to make sure we talk about the immediate after a school is built and in operation, difference in educational value and the whole transition issue, versus 4 versus 2. I think if people just look at numbers without thinking about that part of it, well, not only will they be doing themselves a disservice when they answer the survey, but I think we've done ourselves a disservice by not really understanding what's important to them. Because if we don't bring up at least what they should be thinking about, whether it's important to them or not, that's for them to decide. But if I think it's important to make sure that understanding the differences includes, a lot of the things we have talked about as far as this is what's going to be different in moving forward with just a 2-grade school versus a 4-grade school.
Completely agree. Great comment. Greg?
I am in support of polling. I think the story is now narrowed to a place where we can tell it.
Mhm.
It's a base repair. It's a 2-grade option. It's a 4-grade option. And I think now we have this, I think the Neary Building Committee is a better place to share the information that people need to be able to make an informed decision about what they would like to see. And I do think that also the differential between a 2-grade option and a 4-grade option is important to highlight in that story. And I think a survey is a nice way of presenting information and receiving information, that 2-way communication that Stephanie mentioned.
Stephanie?
And I was just gonna combine, I think this is what you were saying also, Greg, but if you take Jason's piece of like, there's these 3 paths, basically, and for each path, you have to consider what does it mean for Neary and what does it mean for Woodward and Finn, right? So you give people like pathway number 1, if we do base repair, what also is coming with Woodward and Finn? If we do a 2-grade, school, what's coming? And then I think I agree with you, Greg, it's a much more simple story now. So that people can wrap their heads around it with numbers, and you don't get into the nitty-gritty of specific plans. Like that was one of my worries I shared with Greg with teachers, is they will be very quick to want to look at which classroom is next to what, and like get all tied up in that. And like we got to keep people back from that to this very big picture.
All right. So how do we want to get the survey done and out? I know. Don't worry about the survey tool. That's easy. But I think we just need to kind of craft, like, I think someone just needs to take the lead on the message, right? Like we're all in agreement on what needs to be shown, I think, at this point. We'll get the data on the finances. I think we just need one person to take the lead on kind of drafting what that looks like. And then we have to decide as a committee whether we want to post and approve it or whether we want to delegate someone to run off and take care of it. That's, I think, the decision point that we need to decide on right now. Roger?
Are you talking about the survey itself? We'll just have kind of one person delegated to determine either how to do it or to get it done.
One person to draft the content. Don't worry about how it ends up in a survey tool if you're not good with survey tools. But just someone to draft, like, to go from a 2-grade school, we eliminate transitions, and oh yeah, by the way, it's going to be X million more. I know there's 10 other things that need to go in there, but I'm just using that for an example. Just drafting the content and then deciding whether that person just sees it through to fruition and we get it into a survey tool. We have plenty of people that can help with that, or whether we want to come back as a committee to talk about it, because we cannot, the 3 of us cannot talk about the survey offline.
So I guess I'll keep my hand up. So I think there's kind of there's kind of a rough summary of this that exists. Doesn't it just, I mean, wouldn't it need to be just polished up to kind of, move it into a survey? I mean, I'm happy to polish something up. I think the rough is already done somewhere, right? I'm just not sure that I have it. Okay. But
It would be probably pulling excerpts of the PDP, right, Greg and Stephanie? So yes, it does exist. So I guess, Roger, let me ask you this. If I drafted it as an example with one of the school administration members, do you feel a desire to meet again to approve it?
No,
No, no.
That's the question.
Mhm.
Denise?
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm still
You-
first,
you-
I'm still first on the screen, but I better take my
I'm
hand.
lowering your hand. Go ahead, Roger, finish up. You can finish, Roger. Do you have something else or no?
Well, no, I'd probably want to work with, I think your suggestion is really the best way to do it. We don't need another meeting, and if I were going to try to do it, I don't think I would do as well as you. I would want to work with somebody from the school anyway, so,
Okay.
my answer is I don't think we need another meeting if you worked with one of the school folks to just get it done.
Okay, Denise?
I was going to say, I think from some of the slide decks we've had, we could pull off bullet points for each of the three options. And I just want to be, careful that we're not giving out too much information that we don't know what it's going to cost. We do not know what it's going to cost until that August 9th number comes out. And I'll help in any way I want. If you want me to help, if you don't want to do it, Jason, I'll help do it with somebody in the school department. Basically, take something off your plate. It's up to you guys. I'll help any which way I can.
Okay, I appreciate that. Roger, you're back up again.
Back, but we still haven't answered the question regarding how best to distribute, right? The survey, is this going to be, to not just the school parents, okay? I mean, because that's already set up, but I mean, as far as the community, right? I mean, is this how do we, publicize where the survey is and getting it in folks' hands? I presume it would be online in some fashion, through a website, but then we need to try to make sure they look at the website so they see the survey.
So this is where social media should be your friend. In terms of that will be the way to get it out to as many people as possible. Like if you think about the survey we did after the first open forums, which were complete bust in terms of attendance, right? We then got like 400, somewhere between 300 and 400 responses in a very short time period. That's you'll never be fully representative sample, but like that, like we got a lot of really good feedback as part of that. And it started to chart some of our path, right? Like in terms of like I know one of the conclusions was people really wanted us to continue to explore the 4-grade configuration. Again, they didn't have any cost numbers, right? So it was, but just like from a pure vision of where we were headed, it certainly directed some of our thought process, right? If people said, no, I really like having 3 elementary schools as part of that process, I think we'd be looking at very different situation right now of what our options were still on the table. So I do think social media, I do think, Roger, if we do it right, in realizing that some people do not like doing electronic surveys, we could probably have a 1-pager that people could just fill out, and then we don't need to tabulate it per se, but like just glance at it, right? If you wanted to bring some to your meeting, like that is an option too. Again,
I can absolutely do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think we do that, and then again, I think Denise had the library comment, right? If Ryan's great at understanding the people that come in and out of that building, if he thinks a hard copy would be helpful and they could gather them at the circulation desk or something like that, I think those are our options. You don't need to put your hand up. We're such a small.
But I like that. I mean, I like the, so, I think that's very effective as far as a building, so it's great because the senior center to put the 1-pager there and make sure that, the kind of the administration of the building, mentions to folks, here's a 1-pager survey. I think we should get a fair response, and I think also potentially the library. Then it's just getting to, places that aren't really community community meeting places, right? Which is everybody else. So, but that
I-
I'm
sorry.
very, I think taking a one pager over and putting it to the senior center and making sure that Pam and there's another woman over there that mentions it to folks. Hey, this is a survey on the school. Please fill it out. It will be read.
That's
Great
perfect.
idea.
The other idea, I don't know if it makes sense. I was just thinking about the parents of very young children, and the library, I think, partly hits on that, but I was thinking about I don't know, are there daycare center? Like, I know Jen Henry is well connected to all the places where kids go to school if they don't go to our preschool. And
It's,
in the summer, that may be a little different, but
There's a group called Kinder Group.
yeah, like I feel like that's a population we should really be trying, if we could get the one pager to some of, I don't know what's running in the summer in terms of daycare as opposed to preschool, but those are the people who are going to be in the building.
There's someone I know that will be well connected to that, so I will ask my better half.
Okay.
And I think in addition, there's another member of the school committee who's connected to it. So my thought is, I think we have the survey, we have to craft the questions. I think that's a technical piece that will be easy to do. And I just think as we do this, we should think about the product, because we can separate the informational product from the survey and link that product to the survey to be able to help people make decisions as they complete the survey. But I think the two can be looked at as disconnected. So then that one page flyer, Roger, that you talked about, we can place in a lot of places, have a QR code or however, so people are getting the information out too. And however we can help make that happen, we're available.
Okay, agreed.
All right, so because it ties in with the communication I think we need to do for the pre-August 12th, I will circle offline with Greg and Stephanie to figure out how we accomplish this. And then to the extent I need to tap Denise, you in at any point in time, we can either quickly get on, which I'm going to try to avoid, so we don't have to schedule another meeting. But if there is something that we need, just a sanity check on that would be valuable, then we can certainly do that.
That's fine.
Okay, so next item is new FAQ for posting of the transition plan. So, I think we've had a lot of conversations, both at the Neary Building Committee and now the Southborough School Committee has taken an official vote. I was just looking for approval to publish a frequently asked question documenting the school committee's vote and adding a link to the presentation that Keith Lavoie gave a couple weeks ago to the Neary Building Committee. Is there any feedback or questions on that?
I think it's a great idea, Jason.
I agree.
Okay. And then what I was also planning to do with that, and Greg and Stephanie, I really would like you to weigh in on this piece, is I was planning to do like a separate Facebook post on it saying, newsflash, like this is what we plan to do during construction, right? Just that people, right? If we haven't really heard much, and right, just to get a reaction, right? And either continue to validate the path we're going down or make sure we're, getting the feedback outside of the educator group, which you've got a great pulse on that at this point, for how you're going to craft your plan this fall, right? Thinking ahead a couple of years.
No, I think it's out there. It's been shared with the public. So I think for some people, as they weigh their decision, that plan is important, as we learned at earlier community forums. So we can think about how to do that.
Okay. I don't have anything else on that topic. So is there any public comment? Public dropped off, so we can skip that.
Jason, can I just make a comment around, about kind of a communication channel? That I did create a Parents Square public group for the Neary Building project where people can sign up. So if we can get that information out as we, as Roger, you visit, different groups and people can start signing up, and then we can have Mariana push out information on a weekly basis, if a video is posted or some key milestones happening, that she just gets in this cadence of sending information out to that group because they opted into the communication.
Do I dare ask how many registered users you have to date?
Well, we have 21 right now.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Bad. It's not bad.
I think if it's easy to sign up, I think as long as people have the link to sign up, people will.
I'll republish the link again today. I know I had it one of the posts we did at some point, but I definitely have only done it once. So that's a great comment. Thank you, Greg. And then, so then I think especially if Mariana continues to push things out there regularly, I think that will be helpful, right? Because assuming we vote to do something, we're going to have designs coming up, right? And that's where obviously you're going to get a different population that's very interested, going to like Stephanie's comment about the educators, where the classrooms are, the adjacencies, etc. Okay. Meeting schedule. Unless anyone feels inclined, our next meeting will not be until after, like, the night of August 12th at a time to be determined.
I'm good with that.
Obviously, anything comes up in between now and then that we feel like we need to discuss, then, we can do that. So any other business for today?
Jason, from a communication standpoint, I was wondering if I assume I'm on the right path and I want to be corrected if I'm not. It came up at the other meeting and I read it in my Southborough last night about it being the responsibility of the Neary Building Committee to inform the town as to what could be used at Finn. I don't think that's our charge. Am I
It's
wrong?
not.
Yeah.
Well, all I will say, because it came up under other business, so it wasn't on the agenda, right?
Correct.
So,
No, I'm talking about my Southborough too. It was reiterated in my
there
Southborough.
was a few inaccuracies in that article
Okay.
that
Yes.
I will endeavor to correct.
Okay.
But I will say that Capital met last night, and it was
Okay.
put back on Capital's radar.
Okay.
But Capital agreed not to do. Capital's not going to spend any time thinking about that until there's a vote, until and if there's a vote for a 4-grade configuration. If it's a 2-grade configuration, this is all a moot point. So
100%.
Capital agreed to wait 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever it is at this point,
Mhm.
and is ready to figure out a plan on that component with everything else that's going on in town. Should that happen. So yes, I will endeavor to correct that as well.
Thank you.
But doesn't what potentially could happen at Finn really pertain to someone's thinking about a 2-grade versus a 4-grade?
Certainly a factor, but I feel like we have enough data at this point to, but it would have to be taken to another level. Okay. I don't want to go too far on that topic because it's just not on the agenda. But that's the communication piece of it was absolutely appropriate to raise, though, Denise, just to clarify something that's already been discussed in a public meeting.
Cool. Thanks.
But you've got my mind spinning now 5 different ways of how to make sure we capture that and make sure it's a consideration.
maybe I should have rephrased my comment to, doesn't what is communicated about
Correct.
There you go.
potential there. Anyway, all right.
Any other business? All right, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second,
Second.
All right, roll call, Roger,
aye.
Denise,
Bye.
and I am I as well. Have a good day and weekend.
Have a great weekend, guys.
Enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.